Today we're finishing the repair on the Chevy liftgate. Previously, we straightened the metal in this liftgate by pulling it out using a hammer and dolly, grinding it. We filled it with some body filler. I shared with you how to block and shape that body filler and get it into primer and ready for paint. In this episode, I'll share with you how to prepare this primer for paint and then how to lay down a beautiful looking OEM finish. So let's get in the garage and make some noise. Howdy, howdy everyone, Chris here. Welcome back to Garage Noise. If this is your first time here, this channel is dedicated to teaching you everything you need to know about paint and body repair. Whether you're repairing your own vehicle or doing a restoration out of your garage, I want to help you get that job done. Now, the first thing we need to do on this repair is I want to go ahead and put a dry guide coat on this. The idea of a guide coat is when you block it, you're going to expose any high or low areas in your repair. It's also going to let you know when you've removed all the texture out of that primer because you want a nice, flat, smooth finish before you start painting. When you start blocking your primer, you want to start out with 320 grit sandpaper. You also want to choose the appropriate size block for your repair. You want to choose a block that'll cover the largest surface area possible while still being able to hold that block flat. When block sanding your primer, if you can't hold your block flat, that means you're creating an uneven surface in your primer, and the whole goal is to get this straight. So choose a block that you can hold flat and covers the largest surface area possible. Another key to block sanding primer is you want to go in all different directions. Now, the typical technique is to block in a crosshatch pattern or an X pattern, but you can go in all different directions. As long as you're not just sanding in one direction, that's, again, going to create an uneven surface in your primer. When you're blocking your repair, you might have to break it up into sections. In this upper part of this liftgate, we have 3 different sections. We have the top section, a body line, the middle section, and then a thin section that I'm blocking right now with a body line in between. By breaking this up into sections, I can block each section until the guide coat is removed and determine whether that area is straight or not. To form a body line, you don't want to block right on that body line. You want to block up to that body line and then down to that body line. You can always use a piece of tape below or above the body line and then block to that tape to help you shape it. When you block out your primer, there's a good chance you could break through that primer into body filler or bare metal. Now, if you break through into body filler, there's a good chance you could block that out and then reprime it and block it again and be good to go. If you break through into bare metal, then that's a high area and you're going to need to tap that down and apply a skim coat of polyester or finishing glazing putty and then reprime it. So be aware of that. I did break through in several areas on this repair, and I'm going to go ahead and reprime this entire repair. I'll go ahead and finish blocking this panel, and then we'll set it up for primer. I'll talk about the primer we're going to use, and we'll reprime this, and we'll talk about the next step. Okay, so we went ahead and masked off the tailgate. We mixed up some Roberlo ME1. This is a 2K urethane primer. Very good primer. It is a direct-to-metal primer. It also mixes up 4-to-1. That's 4 parts primer, 1 part activator. So it has a catalyst in it where it hardens over the repair area. I am using the 3M Performance gun to spray this primer. If you haven't checked out the review and demo on this gun, check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. Now that we have this all primered, I'm going to put one more guide coat on it. We'll do a quick block on it with some 600 grit sandpaper. Off camera, I went ahead and prepared the rest of this liftgate for paint. So I went ahead and sanded the rest of this liftgate with 600 grit sandpaper. That's all the old clear that we're blending the color into. So we want to make sure we get really close to this glass. We want to get all the edges of this liftgate and all those hard to reach areas sanded really well. You want that shine to be knocked off of that to be a nice dull finish so we have good adhesion with our new clear coat. I went ahead and removed all the dust off this liftgate. We went ahead and washed it with some wax and grease remover. That's an automotive cleaner. And then I went over it with some spray away glass cleaner. That is a water-based cleaner. just to remove any contaminants that are on this panel before we start masking. And then I want to mask off the perimeter of this lift gate. So I'm going around the edge and I'm back taping that edge. So when we apply our clear coat and paint, we don't get any overspray on the inside of this vehicle. I also back taped any holes that lead inside this vehicle. Now that we got the perimeter masked off and the holes back taped, I'm going to go ahead and wet down the floor to help eliminate dust and keep that dust down. Off camera, I repaired some damage on this rear bumper, so I've got Darius prepping this out for paint. He's using a 600 grit foam pad to get all those edges and hard to reach areas. And if you're interested in any of the tools or products I use, I'll leave links down in the description. Now we're going to finish up the masking process, and I'm using some automotive plastic sheeting. This is treated plastic, so when we apply paint, it's not going to peel off the plastic and into our paint job. This is the best way to go about this. It makes it really easy. Cover the vehicle with plastic and then cut out the areas you're painting. Now we've got the bumper all prepped. I'm going to go ahead and tack these areas before we mix up our paint. A tack cloth is just a sticky cloth that's going to pick up any dust or debris that may have landed on these panels right before we paint. I've mixed up our paint, and the paint we're using today is the Nason XL. I found this to be a very reasonably priced paint that covers well. And I haven't had too much problem with the colors. So once in a while you'll get a color that doesn't match quite right, but that is with any paint line. So Nason XL, I picked this up at my local O'Reilly's. To lay down our paint, we're going to go ahead and use a 3M Performance gun. This is a really versatile gun. It has interchangeable tips from 1.4 to 1.7 tip, and maybe some even past that. I think there's a 2.0 as well. I am using the 1.3, I believe, on this. But the way I'll set up this gun is I'm going to keep the air pressure relatively low, around 20 psi. I'm going to have my fan pattern wide open. And when you start spraying, you just want to cover the primer area first. So we're not looking to blend this out yet. Now this is kind of a black metallic finish, so it's not going to be hard to blend, and there's not going to be a real big color difference. So when you're making your passes, you want to be 4 to 6 inches away from the panel. When you're spraying, you want to keep a consistent speed and a consistent distance from that panel the entire time. And you want to overlap 70%. It's really important on metallic finishes, high metallic finishes, silvers, golds. This black, it's not as important, but it's just good to get into the habit of overlapping 70%. So we'll get our first coat covered on this primer, and then we'll let it flash off for about 10 to 15 minutes before we apply our second coat. You don't want to try and cover it in one coat with multiple layers, because it's not going to dry properly and it's not going to flash properly, and it'll actually take longer to cover that way. I really hope you're finding value in this video so far, and if you are, do me a favor, like this video and leave me a comment down below. All that helps this channel grow and reach more people. Now I'm ready to lay down the second coat of base. I don't always tack in between base coats. You can do that, but what I like to do is look it over, see if there's any dust or anything that I need to remove. If there's any imperfections in that first coat of base, I might even sand those out with a little 1,000 grit sandpaper or 2,000, just to knock that down a little bit, because if you have dust in your base coat, it's going to show up in your clear coat. So it's best to watch over that as you progress, as you put your coats of base on, and then before you clear. Now, if it's just some dust on there, I might tack it off before I put my second coat of base on. Here I just saw a little area, so I touched that and we put our second coat of base on. Then the same thing, we want to go over the primer area first. Now, it's probably only going to take 2 coats of base on this black. It covers really well. So what we'll do is we'll cover the primer area first, and then we'll blend it out into the areas of the liftgate and the edge of those bumpers. I won't put color right out to the edge of the bumper, but I'll blend it from the primered section to the old paint. Let's bump up the beats and finish the base coat, and then we'll get into clear coat and the gun we're using for our clear. Now it's time to lay down some clear coat, and the clear coat we're using today is the Finish One 710 spot panel clear. This is made by Sherwin-Williams. I do like this clear coat a lot. It dries quickly. It cuts and buffs really well. So it's going to dry in about 2 hours. I think after about 4 you can cut and buff it depending on the hardener that you're using. But it mixes up 4 to 1. That's 4 parts clear coat, 1 part activator, and it does a real nice job. And if you need information about different brands of clears for your project, you can check out the ones I've tested by clicking on the playlist link in the description. Now, the paint gun we're clearing with today is the Iwata Kiwami 4. This is a really great gun for a budget price. In fact, it's come down recently to $184 for the gun. Now, by the time you're watching this video, it may be all over the place. It was higher than that. In fact, I paid more than that for my gun, but it's a really high quality gun. It's going to give you a really good finish at a reasonable price. Okay, let's talk about the gun settings for this particular gun, the Iwata Kiwami 4. I'm going to open my gun volume wide open. I'm going to open my fan pattern wide open as well. Now, the pressure I'm going to use on this gun is 28 PSI. I just feel comfortable with that air pressure. It's giving me a nice finish with the way I'm spraying. So if you spray differently, you may have to make some adjustments there. And as you start painting and as you get some more experience, you're going to know how you like to spray, the speed you like to spray at, the distance you're spraying from the panel, because all that is basically technique and how you like to spray. So you can adjust your air pressure and your volume and all of those gun settings from the way you like to spray. Now, I spray a little bit closer, but I would recommend 4 to 6 inches away. It seems 6 inches is a universal recommended distance, but I think the most important thing is that you're consistent with your technique in spraying, that you're consistent with your speed and your distance, your overlap. You want to overlap 70%. All of those things are going to give you that high quality flat finish that you're looking for. If you're just starting out painting, a good tip I can give you is don't spray scared. Just get in there. Remember your technique and just, lay it on there. If you have a little run, if you have an imperfection of dust or dirt, those things can be corrected. Even if you have dry spray or orange peel, all that can be corrected. So remember your technique, be consistent with it, and you'll do a great job. If you do have some orange peel or some imperfections, I've got some videos to show you how to correct that, and I'll leave a link at the end of this video. After the first coat of clear, we're going to let this flash off for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the temperature. Now, it's a really hot day today. It's 90 to 100 degrees, so it's not going to take long for this to flash off and for us to be able to apply our second coat. Typically, you only need 2 coats of clear. The first coat, we're not looking for perfection. If you have a little bit of imperfection, a little dry area, don't be concerned about it, because the second coat is where we're going to get that high gloss, flat finish. We're going to put it on a little bit heavier and let it flow out a little bit more so it's nice and flat. The first coat of clear, we're really just looking to introduce that clear coat to the painted surface so we have a good base for that second coat of clear. And then when we go ahead and lay that down, hit it a little bit harder, it's really going to flow out and have a nice high gloss finish. Let's go ahead and lay down the second coat of clear coat. I'm going to slow down just a little bit while I'm spraying this. That's going to allow more material to get on that panel, allow it to flow out just a little bit better and be flatter. So let's go ahead and slick this out. And there you have it, one completely repaired and painted liftgate. I'm really happy with how the bodywork turned out on this. Now the paintwork has a few little particles of dust and it has a little bit more orange peel than I'd like, so we're gonna cut and buff this, but it'll come out beautifully. Listen, if you wanna learn more about paint and body repair, check out one of these videos now. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.